Hey Waffle Gang, I do hope you're well. My name is Mark and today we're checking out some more relationship stories, and if you do love a Reddit story, why not consider hitting that like, subscribe, maybe that notification bell too, and let's crack on with today's first story, which comes from More Size 6733 and says, I'm leaving my husband without telling him why. I found out that my husband was planning to have an affair with a woman from his company that works for another branch. He visits that branch twice a year and she visits his twice a year. They had been flirting for 6 months and they were going to sleep together last Friday when she was here. I sent my husband a picture of me with new lingerie about an hour before our plane landed, and he was supposed to pick her up. He'd already told me he was working late and then going out with his colleagues for drinks and not to wait for him. I wrote that I was his dessert for the lobster pasta I was making. He loves lobster pasta. He was home within the hour. When we were together, he said he was glad he chose to come home. Instead of working, you mean? I should hope so. Yeah, I mean, of course, he said. I don't have the energy to confront him or tell him that I know. I don't want to hear excuses and apologies. The lease is in his name because I moved into his apartment when we got married and we still haven't found our home that we are saving for. So I don't need to worry about that. Our savings and joint accounts are easy to access and divide, and I can do that the day before I leave. I found a subcontract today on an apartment for 12 months. If I get picked, I can move October 1st already. Then I will serve him the papers and tell him the reason is that I'm bored with our relationship and I have fallen out of love. I think it's better that way. Someone asked OP, they said, how are you sure your husband was planning an affair or did she search his phone or something like that? And OP says it started with a lot of pop-up about hotels on our iPad, combined with him being busy and texting more than usual. I became suspicious, so I went through his phone. They have been talking all summer about meeting for sex. She lives a 3-hour plane ride away, so now I know why he was searching hotels in our and her city. Now I can already hear the comments in my head that OP should absolutely, be revealing that she knows that he was going to cheat. Because if you don't and you walk away from this and you say you just leave him because you're bored, you're going to look like the bad guy to everyone else in this. You're likely going to have everyone turn on you because of this, which you don't deserve. You deserve to be supported right now. You're the one who's going through this absolutely shit time because of his actions. I can understand OP not wanting, to listen to the bullshit and excuses and the possible manipulation. But I think at the same time, you can get yourself out of the situation, out of the house, whatever you're going to do, then reveal that you know the truth about it all. And if you're talking by phone, you don't want to listen to the bullcrap, you just say, ignore, hang up, block, all that sort of good stuff. Again, I just worry for OP that if they walk out of this, they say, they're bored with their marriage or whatever. It's just not going to reflect well. Family's going to turn on OP and all this kind of thing. Balance Break says, I would honestly tell him the truth when you serve him. If you don't, the divorce will always be your fault in his mind. He will not learn any lesson and will not have to take any accountability for his part in why your marriage did not last. OP added their own comment and said, dinner was great though, and shared a picture. And also mentioned that they also made tiramisu as well. And I was like, oh, I love tiramisu. But Perfection Pending says, the reason you plan to give will make you the bad guy in a lot of people's eyes. It could even affect future relationships if people think you just gave up and take off when you get a little bored. Give him the real reason, and when people ask, give them the real reason too. She's Got a Chicken to Ride says, why are you taking a bullet for him? Get yourself situated, tell him why you left. Are you afraid that because he didn't actually sleep with her, he's going to talk his way back in? You sent him a photo with lingerie and he came right home. Did you sleep with him knowing he was planning on sleeping with someone else? How'd you find all this out? Not random says you should tell the truth. Your ex-husband knowing that he lost his wife, the potential for a family and a future together, etc. Over a stupid affair will probably crush him. Saying you're bored means if he decides to go to court because he's not happy with the way you divide things, etc. You are the reason for the divorce and it will probably be viewed that way by a judge. It might impact your existing relationships, it could impact your future ones, and it doesn't give anyone a chance to heal or grow. To be honest, protecting yourself with this lie is just a sign of immaturity. End your marriage like an adult. Opie says maybe I'm immature, but I want him to feel my pain. I want him to feel worthless and nobody, the way he made me feel. I know no other way than telling him I'm leaving because I'm bored with him. Not randomly replies to OP and says he won't feel worthless because you were bored. He'll probably feel like he had an immature wife and you were never ready for the commitment of marriage. He might even justify the emotional affair because you were disinterested. He'll probably remain pretty confident because even if he's not good enough for you, he's clearly good enough for someone else, and he will pursue her or another woman, totally guilt-free while taking zero accountability for his actions. He will tell all of his dates, friends, family, himself that he was a great husband and you were a hard-to-please bee who had an inflated sense of self-worth and left the moment she wasn't entertained. And everyone will tell him how he deserves better than you and how much better his relationships after you are because at least they are actually committed. If you want him to feel pain, you'd be honest. You're just making a bad situation worse for everyone, most of all yourself. But you get the life you're mature enough to build. So good luck with that. I think you deserve better. Funky Boy says, alright OP, you can fuck around, I see you. You've got steel balls, but you can do better than the silent treatment. Let's make him squirm. Befriend her and then send a selfie of the two of you cheersing. Or befriend her husband and send them both a selfie. You can be more vindictive than this. I mean, you fucked your husband knowing he was going to cheat on you. You have something deep in you that will allow you to make this way more fun. What OP does at their first update, which says, hi everyone, I hope you remember me. Before diving into my boring life, I want to ask you who reached out and asked my recipe for lobster pasta. How was it? Please share your dishes with me. I've now signed the lease. It's a sublease with 12 months, then month to month afterwards, until the owner can sell his apartment. I'm so happy that I have found it. I feel like I'm born again. I felt nothing but pain and despair for weeks. Now I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. I'm still resolute to just leave and not tell him the reason why. I think this is the only way I can cope with his pain without losing my mind or my dignity. Many asked how that would make me look. Honestly, I don't care. Those who love me unconditionally, and those who judge me, is their opinion really worth it? 20 days later, OP updates again and says, I've been on a high drive this weekend. No moving on Sundays, but I was fortunate to get the keys Thursday. I've been discreetly packing my clothes, and yesterday, Friday, the moving truck came and took all my stuff and my furniture that I bought to my new place. I changed my address to my parents because I don't want my husband to know my new address if he's Googled it. When I was in my new apartment, it looked gloomy and so tiny. I just broke down crying. Like I've postponed my tears and now I could finally feel safe to be vulnerable. Around dinner, my husband started bombarding my phone because I left him a note that I was done with our marriage and filed for divorce. My plan was to never speak to him again, but today, after a million messages and missed calls, I folded and answered him. He was very confused and in a total panic, but I just kept saying that I wasn't in love with him anymore and that I was bored in our marriage. He was confused and begged me to come home and explain. Then he started trying to find other solutions. Maybe I was bored with my job or with our apartment. Maybe we could move and start anew somewhere else. I couldn't hold my tongue and just said, yeah, maybe we can move to city where the other woman lives. That would be very convenient for you. He was silent for a second and then asked what I meant. You know, because the main office is there and you have better chances to advance in your career. Silent again. And he said, listen, I don't care about my career now, I care about you. I love you and I can't lose you. He will do anything to make me happy. I said the only thing was that he left me alone and understood that it is over, because the sooner he realized it was over, the better. And I hung up. I probably need a new phone number because I don't trust myself not answering him again. I was so disappointed in myself for talking to him when I decided I didn't. My parents-in-law have called and wanted an explanation, and I just said that I wasn't in love anymore and wanted an out. They're both confused. All in all, it is better than them knowing the real reasons. I'd rather have them confused than sorry for me, or worse, try to explain his behavior and ask me to forgive him. I'm way better this way. I don't think there's a need for lawyers. We don't own anything together and we don't have children. I have already taken my half of the savings, etc. And I never stood on the lease of his apartment. I see no reason to have lawyers. I already sent my divorce papers to the court, and with or without his signature, I will be divorced in 6 months if he signs too. In 1 to 2 years if he refuses to sign, and I submit a new application every 6 months. And some of the comments below this were saying that, OP should have still done it, that they have more control than them because they would have absolutely went nuclear and told everyone about the affair. Other people saying they can understand OP and he's now going to be guessing. He might even know, but it's going to eat away at him not knowing the full story and never having a real chance to explain everything. I gotta say, it made me pretty sad for OP that they're not going to be getting the true support that they need, that people might hear about this and OP just walking away from their relationship and look at them in a negative way, like some of the comments before were saying, when really OP should be being supported by people around her, her friends, her loved ones. Maybe even the in-laws might support OP when they find out that their son was going to cheat on her. And I kind of feel like one day, to a friend, to someone in a conversation, this will come out in the end. Obviously, I don't know in the end, but it just feels that way to me. But I do wish OP all the best going forward in their new life, and I hope that they live the life they truly deserve. But now I'm going to turn this one to you guys. What do you guys make of this situation? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and let's move on to another story. And our next story does come with an update as well from Dangerous Bean 1984 from the Am I the Arsehole subreddit. And before we do get into this story, I do want to give you a warning that it does contain child endangerment. So if you do want to skip the story, please feel free to do so. Timestamps are always down in the description and along the timeline below. Thank you. And it's titled, Am I the Arsehole for yelling at my son's teacher and making her cry? Last Thursday, I, 36 male, got a call from my son's school telling me I needed to come and collect him because he had passed out during class. My son has passed out a good few times before, so we've made sure he knows what to do when he starts to feel faint, to make sure he doesn't hurt himself. However, when I arrived at school, my son was holding an ice pack to his head. When I asked about it, the nurse told me he had hit his head when he fell. I wondered why he hadn't laid down like we taught him to do. I brushed it off and decided to ask him about it later, and he was still kind of out of it. The next day I asked him about it, and what he told me made my blood boil. Apparently when my son had first started to feel like he was going to pass out, he tried to tell his teacher. When he stood up to talk to her, he was immediately yelled at to sit back down. The next time he tried to tell her, she told him that he didn't look sick, so he wasn't allowed to go to the nurse's office. Then his class was doing an activity that required standing for practically the rest of the lesson. Before the activity started, my son yet again told his teacher that he felt like he was going to pass out and asked if he could sit the activity out. The teacher responded by yelling at him, claiming he was just being lazy and was making excuses. My son's friend was getting worried about him, so he told the teacher, who then started yelling at his friend, accusing them both of trying to get out of the lesson. Not even a minute later, my son passed out, and according to his friend and a couple of other classmates, she acted very shocked, as if she hadn't been ignoring him, trying to tell her how he felt for the last 5 minutes. I'm extremely worried about the impact this will have on my son, as when the fainting first started, he didn't tell any of his teachers as he was scared that they were going to yell at him. This resulted in quite a few injuries from falling. It's taken a while for him to start telling them when he's feeling faint, and I'm afraid this incident will cause him to stop asking and he will hurt himself. I'd wanted to go down to the school that day, but my son had stayed off and my wife wasn't home from work yet. The following Monday, I arranged an appointment with the principal. After I explained what had happened, he called in my son's teacher, who then tried to deny the fact that he ever told her anything and he had just randomly collapsed. This is where I may be the arsehole. By this point I was pissed. I began to scream at her, yelling about how my son could have gotten hurt. I was so pissed I hadn't even noticed that she'd started to cry. By that point I was asked to leave by the principal. My wife and some of my friends think I'm in the right, but my parents and the other half of my friends think I went too far. I don't know about this one. What do you guys think? Am I the arsehole? Edit. I'm just going to answer some frequently asked questions that the answers weren't included in the original post. 1. We're not in the US, so a 504 plan is not in place. However, we do have something similar. 2. My son is in the middle of getting a diagnosis. Doctors say the most likely option is POTS. According to Google, that's postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, which again, according to Google, is a condition in which an excessively reduced volume of blood returns to the heart after an individual stands up from a lying down position. OP continues, 3, my son is 13, and I would say he's a fairly well-behaved kid. Only sometimes gets in trouble for stupid shit that 13-year-old boys do, but he usually stops after getting a verbal warning. We've never had any major issues with his behavior. 4, yes, the teacher was aware of his episodes. Someone asks OP, they said, so what exactly is the protocol? OP says the protocol has been put in place is that he will ask the teacher to go to the nurse. The teacher then has a couple of options of what he or she can do. They can A, choose a trusted student to take him down, B, get another teacher to cover their class for a minute while they take him down, C, get another teacher to take him down, or D, call the nurse to come up to the room, which is only if he suspects he won't be able to make it to the nurse without passing out on the way. And someone else asks what country did it happen in, and OP says the UK. And we're starting the comments with Content Plenty, who says, not the arsehole. The teacher repeatedly yelled at your son, berated him, caused him to injure himself, physically and quite possibly scared him away from communicating his needs in the future. She is a bully. When confronted, she started lying to cover up her behavior and eventually crying. Boo-hoo, that's what bullies do. Bullies lie, then cry when not let off the hook. You losing your cool is completely understandable. Your parents don't need to have an opinion about it, and your wife is in your corner. Consult a lawyer. I bet the principal won't ask a lawyer to leave. Rock Show says, not the arsehole. The teacher blatantly ignored what your son was trying to tell her and it backfired. She of course was going to try and save herself with the principal. Thank goodness your son wasn't hurt more. Snoo Tomato says, not the arsehole. Sometimes manipulative people cry to get out of situations where they are at fault. Had she not lied about the situation and apologized, it would have been different. But good for you for standing up for your child. X-Riverfish says, not the arsehole. I think she needed that dose of reality for her negligence and dishonesty. She literally endangered your child's life because he didn't look sick. I don't remember those school floors being very soft. If he hits his head the right way, it can cause lifelong complications. With that in mind, it might not hurt to have your son looked over, even if he says he feels fine. He was just taught not to talk about feeling unwell, so he might try to hide if he's not feeling 100%. So around 2.5 months later, OP does update the post and says, the new school year starts tomorrow and we've just been notified that this teacher will not be returning for the new school year. The email we received was claimed that she had decided to move on to new opportunities. However, me and my wife have had a talk with some of the other parents and unsurprisingly that is not the case. Apparently my son was not the first or last student she has done this to. This teacher is notorious for never letting anyone leave her classroom for anything unless she can physically see something wrong with them. Even then, there has been a few instances when she's told students having things like extra flare-ups to wait until the end of class. She even tried to do the same thing to my son when he was having another episode. Luckily, since the last incident, he's learned to ignore her, and him and his friends went down to the nurse despite what she said. At the beginning of summer, my wife got a call from one of the other mothers who explained that the teacher had tried to do the same thing to her daughter. As it turns out, she had a friend on the school board and is very well liked by all parents and staff. She arranged a meeting with the teacher, the principal, the school board and the superintendent to discuss this teacher's behavior. Before the meeting, she spent ages compiling evidence against this teacher. She managed to get the medical forms of the student she denied access to the nurse to, with permission from the parents of course. She somehow got all the reports of her behavior towards the students. She got statements from students, parents and other members of staff. She even got a couple of students who had more serious incidents to come to the meeting with their parents and recount what had happened. We couldn't be there since they were going on vacation, but both my son and his friend filmed them telling what happened and we gave it to the mother to play at the meeting. When it finally came time for the meeting, the teacher had not anticipated that the mother would be so prepared. And after an hour in the meeting, the teacher was finally fired after 6 years of mistreating students. If you're wondering how she kept her job so long, I was too. Turns out she was a Nepo hire. The principal is her uncle. For all those wondering how my son is doing, he is doing a bit better, though his episodes have been happening more frequently as of late. Thank you all for the advice and well wishes on the original post. Salt does seem to help sometimes. Ooh, to be a fly on the wall sometimes. But what do you guys make of this situation? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. And just a huge thank you from the bottom of my heart for getting involved in today's stories. Your love, Your support, your time always means the absolute world to me. So thank you so, so much for being involved. And hopefully I will see you in the next one. Take care and much love.